Well, hello. All right. I'm Turner Jer, and I'm going to try something here, something that's new to me. I'm making a video about a game, one of my favorite games. This is Freedom Force from Irrational Games, 2002. Wow, quite a while. This game has gotten very high ratings on Metacritic. It's highly regarded by everyone. And with good reason. It's a triumph on so many levels. It's a great game in a lot of ways. From a gameplay perspective, it's funner than heck. From a writing perspective, it's got great story, it's got great theme and attention to detail. It's just fantastic. The sequel, the aptly titled Freedom Force versus the Third Reich, also very, very good. Maybe it's not rated quite as high. It's maybe not quite as charming, and it also feels a little more scattered and ad hoc, maybe less cohesive. Even though the missions follow from each other more logically, maybe in that one. But somehow this is just the one people remember. It's higher rated, even though it's buggy and it lacks some of the polish of the second game. It's the one that I come back to. Some of those bugs, by the way, can and should be exploited to give yourself an edge, because this is a very tough game. Even on normal difficulty, you'll find that it's hard the first time, and it's still hard the 5th time you play it. And I've played it probably more times than that. So what I'm just going to talk about in this first one, I'm not even going to play in this first one, because instead I'm just going to talk about characters a little bit, which might sound boring, and hopefully it isn't. Characters are, of course, the heart of the team. The Freedom Force is a group of superheroes, and they are a group of Silver Age superheroes, to be more specific. If you don't know what that means, then you're not really a comics person. Or the Silver Age is, well, the old Spider-Mans and Iron Mans and stuff are kind of part of that. But really, to sum up the Super Age, I think Adam West's Batman. Now that represents a characterization, like it's way more extreme. It's a parody, but in this game, we have alliterative battle cries. We have dialogue so hackneyed it would make Joss Whedon blush. We just have the writing, it's so loving. It's such a loving homage and parody to those old comics where people said things like, great meteors and stuff like that. Kind of a Galaxy Quest flavor, too. So, the characters in the Freedom Force, the 10 or 12 superheroes that are given to you that were designed by the creators of the game, they are all fantastic. They're totally great. They're classic archetypes of superhero style. They are interesting in their own right. They're well written. They have some depth generally and some conflicts. But nevertheless, you may find that the game is a lot easier if you make at least one hero for yourself. And the thing about the Freedom Force characters, as awesome as they are, they're not necessarily very efficiently designed as crime fighters. Like, they're not very good at what they do. Some of them have powers that aren't useful. Some of them more commonly, they have stats that leave something to be desired, or they have crappy attributes, and they waste points all over the place. Whereas you and me, we can design a hero for a much lower cost who is much more effective, and we can make him cheap enough that we can hire him early in the campaign, and then he'll gain experience and he'll be able to level up. The interesting thing about leveling up a custom character as opposed to one of the generated ones is that guys like Minuteman and El Diablo, they have their whole progression laid out for them. All of their powers are selected. You just have to pay to activate them or to upgrade them. But a character of your own design, you can add whatever powers you want as you go along. and that's kind of interesting. Let's quickly take a look at Freon, who is a character I made a long time ago. I don't really remember anything about him, but I know I called him Freon because for all the cool superhero types that are explored in this game, they left out a cold-based hero, and well, they had a good reason for doing that, and which you'll see later. But I thought I'd make a guy whose powers were based around cold. We'll see how I didn't do a very good job, really, but let's take a look. So 7723. Take a look right here first of all. Prestige. Now, this could be thought of as a measure of the character's strength. Like Superman would have a very, very high level of prestige compared to a weaker superhero in the DC universe. But it's really just a measure of his cost to recruit. And in the campaign, you will earn prestige by doing missions and by completing side quests and stuff, and such as not allowing too many buildings to be damaged. So you'll have enough by about the 7th or 8th mission, maybe, you'll have enough to think about hiring a new hero for your team. And by then you'll probably have, I think you have like 5,000 or 6,000 when you first get the option to recruit someone. So, like I said, if you can get a guy into your team early on, then he'll start gaining experience right away, and he'll also you'll have the fun of playing with him right away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make a guy that's cheaper than this. 7723 is a little high. I'd like to get a guy who's worth about 6,400 maybe, and then perhaps I can recruit him one mission sooner if he's cheaper that way. That might mean making a sacrifice in terms of his stats, or it might mean just postponing the purchase of one or more powers, which is fine. So let's take a few minutes to look at stats. Stats are the core of your character in a sense, although in another sense they're not. And you can see this guy, just look at the adjectives here: extremely strong, extremely fast, normal, extraordinarily hardy, and minor energy. So from the adjectives you can see that these are pretty good. Let's hover over them and see what they do. Strength modifies melee damage and throwing ability. You probably would have guessed. So melee damage as in how hard you punch and how much damage your melee attacks do directly, but also how much damage you do when you hit someone with something, like a telephone pole. Throwing ability refers to how much you can lift, such as a car versus a cement truck versus a fighter jet. And you may occasionally find that you can just barely lift something heavy and you can carry it, but you kind of hobble along at reduced speed and you can't throw it very far. If you ever find yourself lifting up something that's too darn heavy to throw effectively, then just put it right down again. There's no reason. 6 is quite good. Speed 6, also quite good. Now, you could say speed is the most important thing because you can't do squat in a battle if you can't get there. But at the same time, you don't need to overdo it. 6 is extremely fast, and especially combined with Flyer, which you'll see down here. This guy was designed to be able to fly, and flying gives you a big speed bonus. Not to mention meaning you can take a straighter route to your destination and not have to go around buildings and stuff. 6, we could probably maybe get away with 5, but I would say on your character that you're going to design to add early in the campaign, you should give him a speed of 6 or even higher, because that really will add so much value to him. Agility. You see, I gave this guy only 3, and I had a reason for doing that because basically because he can heal, he doesn't need to dodge as well. And also with such a high speed, it's possible to keep him out of danger pretty well. In this game, tracks, for instance, bullets fired at you are projectiles which trace a path, and if you move, then they'll miss. It's none of that, like, you know, a hit's a hit and bullets follow you around corners and stuff. No. A character with high speed can avoid danger just by moving all the time. Of course, that requires a lot of micromanagement, but you'll find when you start watching me fight that I pause constantly and to make tiny adjustments. Anyway, agility 3, that's okay. Endurance 7 determines the amount of health points. Well, that's just straight up hit points. And this 7, you can see that's his highest stat. And a lot of hit points has some hidden advantages besides the obvious. I gave this guy only an energy 3. Now, energy is like spell points. That's what you use to actually do stuff, to use your powers. And so 3 might seem low. It might seem like that's really important. But the reason I did that is because I used a simple trick, which was to keep my powers cheap to cast. But I made sure that all of my attacks are inexpensive to use, and so I don't need so much energy. Okay, so that was a brief overview of the stats. Let's take a quick break.